Thanks for coming to today's Brownbag. I have a few announcements about a few other things we've got going on this week. Before I introduce our speaker today, the Polish Club at KU is going to be hosting a celebration of St. Andrew's Day. That's going to happen here in Bailey from 7 to 9 this Thursday, the 29th. So it's free, and I guess they're going to serve refreshments, and it should be a good time. And then on Friday, November 30th, then there is a conference called Genocide, the Arts, Memorializing Trauma and Reconciliation. And that's going to be at the Hall Center Conference Hall from 12 to 5. I think there was an RSVP on this, and it was by November 20th. But you might check in on the Hall Center if you're interested and see whether or not they have space whether you can attend. And then also on Friday, we have the deadline for the applications for the spring semester of our FEMSO fellowships. It's the Foreign Military Studies Office that is cooperating with priests and setting up a GRA. And if you're interested in that, come talk to me after the presentation today. I can give you some information. Our speaker today is Ron Francisco, teaches political science, specializes in protest, regime transition, revolution, and civil wars. As a regular here at Reach Brownbag every week. So he's here today to speak to us about Germany and the Eastern Front.
Okay, thanks very much. This is not about Georgia. When I was on sabbatical in 2011, I did my regular sabbatical project, but I looked around to see if anybody had ever coded the Third Reich, protest and repression in the Third Reich, and it turned out nobody had, so I decided to do it. And I was astonished at how much protest there was. I'm just going to go down here and show this to you. It's in the early part there was a lot of repression. It doesn't really start until, well, I mean, there was a lot of meetings and so forth, but 1938 is when there is a lot of activity. And I'm still not to shoot 34. Faster. There we go. You see that there's sporadic protests all the way through. From 1935 to 1937, there wasn't very much. But then in 1938, it starts becoming rapid and continuous. You can see we're in 1939 now, and we've got lots more activity. 1940, 1941, 1942, 1940, whoops, this is the end here in May 8, 1945. So, I was astonished at how much protest there was. It was almost all clandestine protest. And so, now we're going
I'm sorry, these numbers, I'm sorry, I missed, I apologize. What were those numbers?
It's who protested, the numbers of protest.
The numbers of protest.
Numbers of protest and the numbers of repression, yeah. That's right.
We didn't get that.
That's right. Yeah, sorry about that. I just wanted to show you that there was a lot. I mean, I was astonished because usually there, with the Gestapo and all that stuff, there was never very much protest in Germany, but there was actually quite a lot. And it was surprising to me and surprising to a lot of Germans. I quoted this in America under the Linux operating system because Excel makes so many mathematical errors, but I saved it in Excel and I sent it to a lot of Germans, and they were astonished because they didn't know about all this stuff. So anyway, we're going to talk about the Third Reich and the Eastern Front of World War II today. Norman Saul took us back 150 years. I'm not going to take us back half that far. And I have to talk about dynamics because this is the most important thing in most fields, but it's not an area study. So it stayed in equilibrium. It didn't diverge exponentially, oscillate, or become an unstable equilibrium. And that surprised me too because I thought it would. The daily means, this is still Germany, the daily means of protest for the whole period from January 1933 to May 1945 was 7,446 protesters, arrests were 1,292, injured was 11.7, and killed by the state. This is mostly the Holocaust here, but of course the Gestapo killed a lot of people too. That was 1,270. State agents that were deployed were 228. State agents injured were 1.226, and the state agents killed were less than half a state agent per day. So these are daily means. So this is a sub-daily coding. And the most important thing that I discovered, because you can't see this very well, but most of the safer tactics were clandestine mobilization. People met in offices and apartments that were not open to the Gestapo. And this is the open tactics over here. And I did a difference of proportions test. The chi-square is over 1,800, and that's the probability that it's wrong, which is a very low probability. And so most of the dissent in the Third Reich was actually clandestine. And these are the people who mostly did it. Adam Trutz, Klaus von Stauffenberg, of course, tried to eliminate Hitler. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, most people know of, Joseph Müller, Fabian von Schlaudendorf, Helmut Milius, Kaiser Circle, Otto John, Robbie Group, Self Circle, Stumer Group, the Warsaw Jews in 1943, and the Warsaw Resistance in 1944. So that's who did it. This didn't come out very well, so let's just go to the next one. This is, I've got pictures here of the siege of Leningrad and the Battle of Stalingrad. So this is the siege of Leningrad with a German artillery shell hitting a Leningrad apartment building. And this is Stalingrad, the battle in 1942. And this is also Stalingrad, Red Army soldiers being briefed. And this is also the Battle of Stalingrad, where the 6th German Army was captured because Hitler wouldn't withdraw. This is Leningrad again. This is how they tried to get water during the siege, the Nazi siege of Leningrad. It was a huge problem for the Soviet Union, obviously. This is also the siege of Leningrad. A lot of people starved to death, and it was a really grim siege. And this too is Leningrad. This guy is weakened by starvation, so a woman takes him a child's sled and tries to get him some food. This is Stalingrad, the view which greeted Russian reinforcements about to cross the Volga into battle. That was difficult. And this is backwards, and it's also Leningrad. I don't know how it got backwards, but it got backwards. this is also Leningrad, people jumping out of buildings that were targeted by German artillery. And this is sad. This is an 11-year-old girl, and these are all of her family that died during the siege. And this is a modern shot of the cemetery where all the victims of the siege of Leningrad are buried. So we have that there. And now we're going to talk about the Eastern Front. Actually, we're going to talk about all the events that happened in Germany and the Soviet Union in the Eastern Front. From June 30th to September 7th, 1934, the SA was destroyed by the SS. The SA was mostly gay people, and the SS didn't like that, neither did Hitler, so they killed them mostly. 1935 to 1937 were quiet years, and it was a good economy, although Hitler spent a lot of money and made the country almost bankrupt. November 9th, 1938 was Kristallnacht, or Night of the Breaking Glass. It was also the year of the Anschluss with Czechoslovakia and the annexation of the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia. So this is before real hostilities begin. And then the Hitler-Stalin Pact in 1939. And then on the 1st of September 1939, of course, Hitler invaded Poland, and the army began creating assassination plans. This reaction here is what happened in Germany during the time. The army began creating assassination plans because they thought Hitler was crazy to invade Poland and to get involved with the Soviet Union. So then on the 4th of April 1940, Western Europe was attacked and subdued, and there was a high level of protest at this in Germany, mostly clandestine, although the Schultz brother and sister in Munich came out in public and actually protested publicly, and they were, of course, arrested and executed. But there was a high level of protest because most Germans knew that if you tried to fight the Eastern Front against East Central Europe and the Soviet Union, Ukraine and the Soviet Union, well, Ukraine was in the Soviet Union, you would have a problem because the Red Army was a big army, and then you're going to open another front, which was idiotic, to attack Western Europe, but Hitler was sort of an idiot, and so he did that. And then on the 6th of March 1941, he attacked the Balkans. And then on the 22nd of June 1941, invaded the USSR. There was a high level of protest, and a lot of people tried to kill Hitler at this time, especially in Ukraine. They planted bombs on several airplanes and blew up several airplanes. Unfortunately, Hitler didn't get on those airplanes. And so it was a problem that they couldn't actually get Hitler. He was elusive. So then, of course, after Kristallnacht, the Holocaust began. And by 1941, Jews were required, September 1st, 1941, Jews were required to wear a yellow star. There were even higher levels of protest, again, mostly clandestine in Germany at this time because they didn't, what's that done to it? I will get rid of that. A lot of people thought that the attack on Jews was just idiotic, largely because Jews had been mostly Germanized. I mean, they were mostly assimilated into Germany. And by that time, most of the Jews had left, because after the night of the breaking glass in 1938, most Jews left Germany and got into Switzerland and elsewhere that was safe. And therefore, most of the Jews that were killed in the Holocaust were essentially European Jews and Ukrainian and Russian Jews. So on the 27th of May in 1942, Heydrich was assassinated in Prague, and that led to still higher levels of protest, because about this time it was dawning on most Germans that they were going to lose the war. By 1942, certainly. On the 10th of June 1942, Lidice was destroyed in Czechoslovakia, and there were still higher levels of protest then.
You just let
Let's
it
click
go.
on it, because, yeah. Okay, there we go. Okay. Then, on the 23rd of November 1942, the German Sixth Army was captured at Stalingrad, and public opinion turned, in a majority sense, against the regime at that point. I know this from Peter Hoffmann, who was a German dissident who left as soon as Hitler was elected chancellor, and he stayed in Switzerland for the whole time, but he was in touch with all the dissident organizations in Germany. And he reports that many of these organizations, like the Kreisel Circle and the Solf Circle, did surveys, random surveys of people, and found that most people thought that Germany was going to lose the war, and this was a big problem. So public opinion turned against the regime absolutely after Stalingrad, because everybody understood what that meant. And then from April 19th to May 19th, 1943 was the Warsaw Ghetto Rising, and that was brutally repressed, but a lot of Germans realized what was going on, and they got even more skeptical at that point. And then on February 22nd, 1943, the shoals of the White Rose in Munich were beheaded by the Gestapo, and they, after that happened, there was some open dissent in Germany, but it was expressed very carefully, because the Gestapo was ever vigilant on open protest, but not on other protests. And then, of course, the tide turned absolutely against Germany. On the 5th of June 1943, the Battle of Kursk, and Germans then resigned themselves to likely loss of the war, especially in the Eastern Front. And on the January 14th, 1944, the siege of Leningrad was finally lifted, because the Germans needed those people to fight the Red Army. And on February 26, 1944, the Red Army takes Porkov. And then on May 9th, 1944, the Red Army gets into Ukraine and takes back Crimea. And so this is a difficult problem for the Germans. On the 6th of June 1944, of course, the Allied armies landed in the West. In Europe. My uncle was on D-Day in Normandy, and he was convinced that the Americans defeated the German army, but I never wanted to tell him that that wasn't true. He was in Patton's army, and they went very quickly through France, but that's because the Germans didn't have very many people in France. So, on the 20th of June 1944, the Red Army captured Minsk, and then on the On July 20th, the same day, 1944, Colonel von Stauffenberg fails to kill Hitler because of a table leg in the way of the bomb. Hitler got injured but not killed, and that was dreadful. Almost the entire German army command at this point wanted Hitler dead because they thought he was an idiot and he was ruining Germany, and they thought they could negotiate a peace with the Soviet Union and then negotiate with the Western Allies, but of course that didn't happen. On the 19th, the 1st of August 1944, the Warsaw Rising, which Jarek Pikokevich was in, went up against the Nazis, and they thought that the Red Army was going to help them, but of course the Red Army did not help them. You know that story, that's a sad story. And Jarek Pikokevich was taken prisoner by the Germans and then escaped and made it to Ireland and married Moira. So, on the 19th of August 1944, the Red Army took Bucharest, and then in December of 1944 was the Battle of the Bulge. My uncle was in that too, but and he still thought that the Allied armies were defeating Hitler. He didn't understand. So, on the 27th of January 1945, the Red Army liberates Auschwitz. This is mostly the end of the Holocaust at this point, because the Holocaust, well, the death camp, the main death camp was Auschwitz, and the Red Army liberated it, and it was terrible. My uncle liberated several of them in Czechoslovakia too, but Auschwitz was the worst one of all. And then on the 6th of March 1944, the Ukrainians defeated Germans in Hungary, and the situation in Germany, of course, is resignation to likely loss. And then on the 13th of March 1945, the Red Army marched into Vienna. I had a landlady when I was at the University of Vienna, Clotilda Schmidt, who was a Nazi, and who was, her husband was a Nazi, and they managed a factory in Brno. And she would tell me stories of what happened in Vienna, and I mostly dismissed them, but I probably shouldn't have. At any rate, then on the 26th of March 1945, the Red Army took Berlin. And when the Red Army took Berlin, there weren't very many males left. There were a few kids, male kids, but most of the people in Berlin were women. And you know, the story is well known that the Red Army raped a lot of German women, and it was a brutal time for German women, but not as brutal as in civil wars. It's an interstate war, and it wasn't nearly as brutal. So, this is Stalingrad. This is a strategy session at Stalingrad. And this is the number of protesters in Germany. And you can see that there was a lot at first, and then there was a lot in terms of clandestine, and then in the years that nothing was happening, there weren't very many, and then after that it was very high levels of protest. And these are deaths, and you can sort of see that there were deaths here, but they're just overwhelmed by the Holocaust. And since I didn't know how many people got killed per day, I just took 6 million and divided it by the number of days. And so that's, you know, the deaths are mostly Jews in the Holocaust. So that was, you know, settled basically by the invasion of the Red Army and by the invasion of Western armies. And after that, the story is well known. Israel was created in 1948, and because everybody felt sorry for Jews at that point. So I guess the most surprising thing to me in this whole enterprise was the number of protesters in Germany, because I had no idea that there were that many. And the number of people who turned against the regime early on in 1937 and 1938, especially, and then a majority of the Germans after 1942, was really amazing. So I will stop there and answer any questions you have if I can. I don't think there's anything more now.
This scenario to become true. Okay. Thank you.